Welcome to Who We Are. I'm your host, Maya Kalaria. Decolonizing the power of narrative, Who We Are centers the voices of the global majority, people who have experienced colonial harm and marginalization, those who may have lost connection to their cultures, lands, ancestral heritage, food, spiritualities, languages, and much more through colonization, and are now reclaiming their connection to their roots. This is a living archive for stories of struggle, hope, and healing from systems of oppression. It focuses not on what we do, but on who we are, a bridge between the legacy of our ancestors and those who come after us. So let us bear sacred witness to the stories that have silently lived inside our bodies, stories that long to be told and heard. This is who we are. Hi Meng, thank you so much for joining us on Who We Are, the podcast. I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself a little bit more and to tell us more about the lands that you originate from and the people that you originate from.
Thank you so much, Maya, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Mengwen Cao. You can call me Meng. And I use they, them pronoun. I'm currently in Brooklyn, New York, but I grew up in China. My hometown is called Hangzhou. It's a really beautiful city. It used to be the capital of China many, many, many years ago in Asian China. And it has this beautiful lake in the middle of the city. Everything else was kind of built around it. There's a lot of beautiful folk tales around the city. I personally think it has a perfect blend of traditional and modern elements.
And were your parents born in the same city as you?
Yeah, they were born in the same city as me. So I guess, our family has been there for a long time.
Like a few generations, like hundreds of years, or do you know how far it goes back?
I'm not sure exactly how far it goes back, but I do know on my mom's side, I think her parents also grew up in my hometown.
Right. And which part of China is it in terms of like northwest, southeast? Like where could we locate this?
So my hometown is close to Shanghai.
Right.
It's in the southeast China.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned some folk tales. Do you know any of those folk tales?
Yes. The one that I love the most is about white snake. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically this white snake, she can turn into human form, and she has a little sister that's a green snake. So as these fairies, they cannot usually fall in love with humans, but this fairy tale they do. And it's funny that I grew up watching this TV show that's adapted from this folktale. And surprisingly, these main characters were all played by women.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that planted a very it planted some queer seeds in me.
Love it.
Since I was young. There's a specific part I remember. It's quite long. So there's a part when they meet on this bridge on this lake. But basically, it's you fall in love with people who you might not be allowed to fall in love with and decide to change the course of your whole life.
Oh my gosh. Is this quite an ancient folk tale as well?
Yeah.
And who told you? Who passed that down to you?
I think it was very much in our culture. So I don't remember who told me about that folktale the first, but I do remember it was very steeped in the media I consumed. So the TV show I told you about, it was playing every summer
Right.
on the TV. And there's music around it. There's all kinds of play that's adapted from it. So it was very much steeped into our culture.
Right.
There's traditional play about it, and there's also like modern twist to it. Yeah. I kind of love how like all these like traditional Chinese folktale that's being reinterpreted throughout generations.
Yeah, to meet each generation where they're at as well. It's kind of a living tale in some ways, isn't it? It kind of, yeah, adapts as we adapt, which sounds so beautiful. And I wanted to ask you as well, what do you know about your ancestors, if anything? Do you know what kind of, I don't want to use the word jobs because I feel like that's a very modern thing, but like what their livelihood was or anything about their lives at all that was passed down to you?
So ancestors meaning the ones who already passed, or
Yes.
so let's trace it back a little. The ones who passed away who meant a lot to me, my grandpa, he passed away a couple years ago, and I was told that he was a very good student and he's very good at like writing and mathematics, and he just loves learning. But when it was time for him to go to college, the war broke. So he was in the army for a while. Also, at that time, people don't have a lot of agency to decide what kind of jobs
Yeah.
they can have in China. So I remember he was just assigned to be some kind of manager in this place that I think helped to distribute food or something. I know that wasn't his passion.
Right.
But the stories I was told about him, he just has all these like interesting hobbies. For example, he kept bees for a while,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you will just catch him biking with this beehive on his bike. Yeah.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah, yeah. And he loves like reading novels. He's quite reserved, I would say, but I can tell he has a lot of these like, oh, he also loves playing Tai Chi every day. I just feel like the job really didn't define him. And yeah, I think at that time, just it made me think about how much agency we now have. What a privilege to choose our own career path based on our own interest. Um, I know it wasn't like that for him.
Yeah.
And so that grandpa was on my mom's side. And then on my dad's side, both of his parents passed away. I know his dad, my other grandpa, was in the army for a long time as well. Same with my grandma also. It's kind of hard to translate those jobs into English.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about how migration changes us, like how language is so limiting sometimes. Yeah. But I do remember my dad will always talk about my grandma as someone who's really brave. Um, there's one story that stood out. I remember it was during Cultural Revolution, and she would just somehow being labeled as this type of people. Oh my god, it's just all so hard to translate. Oh my
Yeah.
god. So during Cultural Revolution, there are all these people who kind of blindly follow rules, and they would prosecute people based on very arbitrary reasons. And my dad told me one time he actually saw my grandma being, I would say, pretty much bullied on the streets by these people, but she would not surrender. She just kept resisting.
Wow. I know there was just so much going on for China and the rest of the world at that time. And I wanted to ask, did your family ever mention anything to do with colonization, the British, like anything like that?
Definitely no.
Okay. So, when did you realize what colonization was for a start, and then that China had been impacted by these invading forces that did changed the cultural landscape and did oppress the Chinese people in various different ways.
I mean, we did learn about colonization in history books, but actually, now that I'm here, I do sometimes wonder how much of the things that we were taught in school were real. And I definitely don't remember any of my direct family talking to me about colonization or any political events.
Right.
But I do remember maybe like visiting Shanghai when I was growing up, and there's all these like French concession area where it's usually considered fancier.
Yeah.
And in Shanghai, there's this area called the Bund, and the architecture is drastically different from the ones I grew up with. It's just very foreign. But ironically, I remember people consider those districts better.
Right.
Uh-huh. hmm And even till now, I think those districts are still more expensive than the other ones. It was not talked about. I came to the States when I was 22, and these concepts, I think, slowly become more apparent as I engage more in my own learning. But it was very not clear when I was in China.
Right.
And even in terms of culture influence, there's definitely a sense of things that's imported from the outside is better than the things we already have. But it's all complicated. I think nowadays there's a huge wave of reclaiming our own culture, but it's all just kind of mixed all together.
Right. It's really interesting. And I think about Hong Kong as well, and just how that was it still is so colonial and so British. And when you were saying about how the French areas are still considered quite, I don't know the word, but like almost elite or like better than. And I think what you mentioned about the value of things as well, like that is a classic indicator of, if prices are higher and stuff, it's like it's of more value inherently.
Yeah, it's just bougier.
Yeah, and
somehow.
it's like, why? We know why, but like, why?
Yeah, I also remember like my major in college, in university in China was English. So we would have foreign teachers coming to teach us English. And I just remember like, wow, every time when people see a foreigner, the way they treat them is just very different. Especially talking about whiteness. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Could you share a little bit more?
I think there's just growing up, if I look at it from a lens of just human to human connection, it was okay. But when I look at it from a higher perspective of how people treat foreigners, especially white people, there's a level of respect that was not given to people from our homeland. I think there's maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's just there's a phrase in Chinese called 崇洋媚外, meaning the things from the foreign land is better. Or like, yeah, considered better than what we have in our home. Oof. Yeah, I can feel like talking about this, I can feel like my body is heating up.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. And hearing you, it indicates that in the body, this still lives. And I think about the wider people of China who may also feel quite similarly, and how deeply embedded it is, this, I don't even know how to put it into words myself, But it's just the fact that you said that, the fact that you said like you can feel your body heating up, it's like it still lives, like this feeling around it. That's how it sounds to me. And I hear you, even though I'm not from where you are. I hear you as an Indian woman born in England, listening to you, and how those kind of stories live in my body too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially maybe there's just a lot of the unsaid and repressed histories that we don't even have words for, but it's definitely part of our body. And still, yeah, just bubbling, bubbling. Mm. And it's interesting to talk to you as someone who grew up in a land that maybe your ancestor didn't come from, but I did grow up in a land where my ancestors come from, even though now I am primarily living in a land where my ancestors are not coming from. But I think the concept of colonization was also a little hard, because if you really trace back, my ethnicity is Han, and that is a majority ethnic group in China that actually did a lot of invading of the indigenous groups.
Right.
So sometimes I do find it hard to really unpack colonization from my unique embodied experience. In my body, I probably have the colonizer settler blood, and I am also at the same time being colonized and oppressed. Yeah, so it's kind of complicated.
Yeah. And as you've come to more consciousness about this very complex lived experience, which I'm sure is both unique and shared by many as well, because colonization is a very complex topic, and it didn't just start with the British or the Europeans. You know, even India was colonized before the British came along. But as you've come to more kind of conscious awareness of how that lives in your body, how has that affected your, I mean, this is a big question, but how has it affected your life in the sense of your perspective or the way that you live?
How has it affected me? Maybe the way it affected me is I will consider it as an invitation for me to get deeper into my embodied wisdom instead of fully relying on the outside information that I receive from media. And as someone who's been traveling back and forth between Asia and the States, I can tell the way information was distributed is very heavily based on how to say this. I think right now I am trying to live a life that's more based on my own body wisdom. And I try to live a life that's not so much filtered upon other people's opinion or the history that's kind of taught upon us. I really want to engage in more direct conversation with people and kind of form more authentic and real connections one-on-one or in smaller groups instead of being led by mass consciousness. I think even in my own family, I started having these oral history interviews with my family members and just allow them to tell their own stories and be very compassionate about how we're all holding all these nuances without much blame or just kind of like knowing that we're all trying to find our ways in these systems that's so embedded with a lot of toxic underlying influences from all the generations before. Knowing that when we are fully in our body, we do have the power to change the narrative and to build a new world that we can safely thrive in. And that will look different for different people. These days, I'm realizing I am trying to connect or build an ecosystem that's very diverse and that's built upon real connections. It might be slow, but it can last longer. It's way more sustainable than dragging everyone under to it just feels more sustainable. I think growing up as queer in China, I already knew that I need to build a word for myself and connect with people who I might not be connected in my physical world. And then coming to the States, suddenly being labeled as Asian, as immigrants, as quote unquote marginalized community. I think we're entering a world of like really fast globalization, and lots of people are moving around a lot and we change our context a lot. How can we be more in tune with our own body, with our own core values? As the outside changes drastically, we can still be centered.
I'm just picking up on all of the wisdom there, and I'm so curious about like, where did this wisdom come from? Was it something that you've always carried, or was it like a bud that flowered at some particular point in your life? Because you have so much to me, as someone who has known you for a relatively short time, but still some time. I am struck by how much embodied wisdom you have, and would love to know about, how that flourished within you.
Trauma.
Of course. Say no more.
I guess I consider myself someone who's really, I throw myself into experiencing life deeply. So that means having a lot of heart opening moments, but also having a lot of heartbreaks. But I'm grateful for all these heartbreaks as well, because it forced me to, it not forced me, like it, again, it invites me to heal. 2022 was a very recent turning point for me. At that time, my body was collapsing. I remember feeling just really disconnected with my body. I was really allergic to everything, cry, like my eyes were just watering, out of control, and I couldn't really breathe. And slowly I realized it's because I was under constant stress, being a freelancer, artist, immigrant living in New York the last 8 years, just hustling my way. And then I moved to a neighborhood that's primarily Chinese immigrants. And suddenly I felt a wave of relief. Like suddenly I don't need to prove my worth to be treated well, to be treated with some basic respect. And also, this neighborhood has a lot of, like, gives me a lot of access to things that I usually don't get when I was living in another neighborhood that's very vibrantly queer and creative, but definitely not Chinese. And I think that was the beginning of my latest iteration of remembering my roots. In this neighborhood, I started to have easy access to Chinese food, and Chinese massage, Chinese body care and health care that I was just so deprived of for the last 10 years. And I noticed my body start to heal slowly. And it was really interesting for me when I decided to go back to Asia for a while, and my first stop was Thailand. I stayed in Chiang Mai for a couple months without doing anything. All my allergy went away. I could breathe again. Yeah, for so long I tried everything. I tried taking pills. I tried taking allergy shots. Nothing worked. And I told myself it's okay. It's just allergy. It's not a big deal. But only until I started to be able to breathe properly, I realized, wow, I was putting my body in a place that's basically, I think my nervous system was just so repressed and felt so unsafe to even breathe. Yeah, that question you asked was really big. I don't even know where to start. But yeah, I think that was like a big turning point for me to like really come back to my body.
Yeah. And I think about how you're coming back to your body, and it is so, when I listen to it from a decolonial perspective, it is so decolonial because it's like the fragmentation of what's happened to us as a people in different ways, different kind of things happen to us all, but then also living in the country that you live in, Turtle Island, it's the fragmentation of just existing there. And as an Indian woman living in England, the fragmentation of existing here and suddenly being the other, suddenly being subject to certain systemic oppression that white people are not under. And some are under a lot of systems of oppression, obviously, but like there is a very specific racialized impact. And when I think about how fragmented I was and how what you are doing to come back to your body is the opposite of that. You're reclaiming yourself and making yourself whole again. And that is so decolonial to me when I listen to it. And it's so inspiring that you took what happened to you and you turned it into something beautiful. You didn't just kind of give up and go, no, like it sounds to me like you use this also as a practice to keep your heart open. You're not just closing your heart. You are almost, to me, it sounds like very committed to keeping your heart open. And yeah, there's heartbreaks in life. But if you close your heart to the heartbreak, you also close your heart to the amazing stuff, right? But it's hard to keep your heart open. It's hard to keep your heart open.
Definitely. But it's also hard to keep our heart closed.
Yes.
I think I remember one time I had a realization that one of my biggest fears is to be numb. Mm-hmm. I came to this life to experience. And I believe being numb is an important part for us to thrive. But yeah, I came to this life definitely to try and savor all kinds of flavor of life. And being numb is part of it, but like I think to be able to try all kinds of experiences was more important. Even the heartbreaks. It's such a gift. I feel like honestly every time after a heartbreak, my self-love level goes up.
When you say heartbreak, do you just mean romantic relationships or do you mean all sorts of heartbreak?
Oh my God, all sorts of heartbreak. I mean, there are so many things to be heartbreak of. But yeah, I think heartbreaks in personal relationships, but also heartbreaks of seeing people who are like me being disrespected or even killed, which is something that I witnessed a lot when I was in the States. And Yeah, just I think seeing how the oppressive system is making us suffer in a very non-humane way is heartbreaking. Also, with what's happening right now,
Yeah.
there are so many wars happening right now. Yeah, there are, I don't know, so many reasons to have heartbreaks these days. But I think what I'm trying to do these days is really trying to look at why I feel pain and how can I create environments for these pains to exist and also slowly heal. Yeah, I think for a while I've definitely go through a period when I'm just avoiding it. But then I realize if I just keep avoiding it, it does not heal.
It's true. And has this helped you to build community? This kind of, I would say it's a skill, it's a mastery that we build over time. Has this helped you, this ability to keep your heart open enough to sit with the pain and also to move through the pain and alchemize the pain into more healing? Has that, yeah, how is that translated into building community?
Yeah, I think building community is such an important part of me because I think part of the healing just comes from being with people who can see you and feel you. And I think right now the way I'm building community is probably by sharing my medicine. I think I go through phases. There was definitely a period of time when I built community by trauma bonding, but these days I want to build community by medicine sharing. Yeah, I feel like after experiencing all kinds of heartbreaks, I've also picked up a toolbox that's consisted of a lot of like somatic practices and creative expressions. And I find it really rewarding to kind of compile them into processes that I can share with other people. And I also love creating spaces that feels safe and open for people to just come as their full self, which is something that I feel like I had to do for myself over and over. And yeah, last in April, I went to visit Thich Nhat Hanh's temple in Vietnam, and sitting in front of his altar, I just had a download. Somehow, yeah, this phrase came to me that you're a frequency holder, you're becoming a place. And I'm still like understanding what that means. But that day, I remember I found myself like meeting these people who came to this place from all over the world. And we just happened to sit there under the rain in front of this teacher's altar who really inspired us to kind of build a more compassionate and loving world through being mindful. And I just remember feeling so moved, and the synchronicity was just so wild. And yeah, I think as I am also trying to build my own space, both physical space and also digital space, I realized what I'm trying to do these days is to try my best to hold a frequency of love and invite people who want to share that frequency together and slowly build something. Yeah, another learning that I'm being integrating these days is I think in this stage of my life, I'm trying to find people who I want to build sustainable relationship with, rather than deciding the shape of the world I want to build. It's more of attracting like-minded people and allowing a lot of space for us to co-create, rather than deciding on whatever this empire is. And then deciding like, okay, this is the shape, and then you have to come and make that happen. Yeah, the last couple of years I've been kind of going back to nature more and more. Living in New York City, the capital of capitalism, was really it on one hand it was activating because I've never had another place where I can meet so many creative, queer, just radical minds. But at the same time, the way the machine brings everyone into a crazy temple that's not organic was taking a huge toll. My body was taking a huge toll. And being in nature, it reminds me just another way of living, a much slower, organic, maybe sometimes chaotic and messier way of living. Yeah, I want to build a garden where we can all come in our messy ways, but at the same time be there to support each other. Yeah, be our whole self together.
I love that. And I resonated with everything you've said. I really particularly resonate with how you're interested in building relationships with people and then letting that inform what comes next, rather than, imagining this world and then trying to fit people in and going, right, we need to build that. I really, really hear you and feel very, very similar to that. And it feels much more accessible and doable, because I think, people talk about, let's go create a new world, let's go create a new, but even for dreamers and visioners like us and creatives who are similar, it's a big ask. It's a big thing. And we all have these different ideas. And so when we're in relationship, it naturally comes up anyway, because we co-create. Even this conversation right now in this present moment between you and I is co-creating a frequency, which is very unique, which is seeding something in itself. And every conversation we have with like-hearted people is like that. And it just, the next step reveals itself. And it's that divine mystery as well. I know I'm going off on one now, but it's the divine mystery, but it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I really hear what you're saying. And I just want to testify that you create a beautiful space for people. So I just want to say that as well, because I have been part of one of your spaces and it's been life-changing. So I also want to just say that.
Thank you. It was beautiful to have you.
Thank you.
In that space.
So, you have naturally answered the question that I was going to ask anyway, but I do have one final question. I wanted to ask you about boundaries, because as someone who's open-hearted, who is very much living in the present moment and is incredibly love-centered in this beautiful way, how do you find that boundaries help you to maintain that and to co-create this new world?
That's the hardest lesson that I'm still learning. I think boundaries is, again, growing up in China, I think that's something that we were not taught. For a long time, I felt like I kind of equate boundaries with being cold, and but more and more, I really find boundaries are protections, and you can only set boundaries when you really know yourself. Maybe it's kind of similar to when you choose a home. funny enough, like 2 months ago, someone broke into my home and I felt this sense of violation to my boundary in a really visceral way. And it makes me realize, even though we are open-hearted people, we need to protect this tender space by putting up boundaries so that we can keep loving. Otherwise, yeah, right now it is a hard time to keep a tender, soft heart. I think we've all probably have been consumed, like at one point of our life, be consumed by fear or anger or rage, rightfully so. And I still feel that. But I am learning to, transmute those energies to power. And that's the power. That's also power to say no. I think it requires a lot of discernment. Again, going back to our body again, like, does your body want it? Do you actually want it?
Yeah.
Do you have the courage to be disliked? I think being someone who, like, that was definitely a core wound for me, to lose belonging. Again, as someone who's like constantly migrating and moving, like having a sense of belonging in community was so tied to my survival. But I have so many thoughts around boundaries. Oh my God, I'm trying to like calm myself down. Be like, okay, one layer at a time.
I think you've done well. You've said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've said it. Okay.
Thank you so much. So much for being on this podcast and taking the time to share all of your beautiful embodied wisdom. And until next time.
Yes. Yes. Until next time.